Hello. We recently heard that Jervis Johnson was joining Mantic Games to work on a brand new version of DreadBall. DreadBall All-Stars is coming to Kickstarter soon, but I have had the chance to play it in a prototype version, and I had a lot of fun. And I'm going to share some of my initial impressions with you today. I'm Jordan, this is Jordan Sorcery, and today I'm spending some time with Mantic Games' brand new DreadBall All-Stars. It has been known for a little while now that Mantic were working on a brand new version of DreadBall, and then when it was announced that Jervis Johnson was going to be involved, I got quite excited about it because I love Jervis Johnson's games. The work he's done with Games Workshop over the last 40 years is absolutely awesome. So many genuine classics. And when you read things like his White Dwarf articles, the J-Files, the way he thinks about games is just really interesting. And the way he approaches like the competitive spirit of games is something that I really like and can quite resonate with. And yeah, there's a lot to like in his philosophy around games, game playing, and games design. So when Mantic reached out and they said, well, they offered me two things, essentially. One was the chance to talk to Jervis about the creation of this game, and another was an actual prototype copy of it. And obviously, I said yes to both because I was really eager to find out more. So this is truly a prototype copy. So this has like hand-printed and bound, stapled together rules. It doesn't have complete final versions of a lot of the stuff. Some of the cards have like placeholder art. There's a lot in here that is not final. It's very much just a chance to get a feel for how the game works, you know, what it broadly speaking will look like on the tabletop and how the majority of the rules will actually work in a regular game. So I've had a lot of fun just tinkering with it, playing around with it. But obviously, this is not a full review because this is not a final game. And also, of course, I've received this for free and I got the opportunity to speak to Jervis. So I'm not completely unbiased here because I'm not just coming to this, picking it up off the shelf, and then making a call. I'm obviously influenced to some degree, even if I try not to be, by those interactions and that kind of stuff. So bear that in mind before we get any deeper into this. This is very much just my personal opinions based on what I've played so far of a test version of the game. My history with DreadBall dates back to its very first edition that was released in 2012 and was designed by Jake Thornton. I didn't play the original game a huge amount, but what I did play, I did enjoy. It was fast-paced, it was appropriately brutal, it was fun to take this futuristic setting and put orcs and elves and dwarves alongside humans, and you could slam through some really fun games very quickly. It is hard to believe, but the fact that it's been 14 years since that first edition came out, that kind of blew my mind when I was sat there thinking about it. There have been many editions since, or at least lots of expansions and different seasons. There's a full, complete second edition of the game as well. There's been a lot of exploration of what you can do with DreadBall and how you can play it in different ways. Mantic have continued to support it throughout that time, and there have been other amazing designers involved. People like James Hewitt, who designed Warhammer Quest Silver Tower, one of my favourite tabletop games. An absolute brilliant game. So having all of these different people involved in the history of DreadBall means that there's a lot to live up to here when it actually comes to designing a brand new version. So when I got to chat to Jervis Johnson, I was keen to understand like what was his take on the game, what did he want to achieve with DreadBall All-Stars?
DreadBall All-Stars, what we've tried to do is make it a fantastic gateway game. So if you've a great intro to the hobby, so very accessible. At the same time, try to make sure there's enough depth there so that if you're an experienced gamer, then it offers stuff to you too. We also wanted to make sure that it was a contrast. Well, it already was because DreadBall existed beforehand. So we wanted to keep its style and its theme and the way that it's different to Blood Bowl. And for me, that's Blood Bowl. If Blood Bowl is American football, with people really hitting each other very, very hard. Then DreadBall is more like basketball or maybe five-a-side football or ice hockey with people hitting each other very hard. So it kind of like you get a lot of scoring. It goes from one end to the other very quickly. So and we wanted to keep that element in there of that fast play. And what we've been finding in playtesting is that once you've got your head around the rules, basically, which doesn't take terribly long, you can usually finish a match in about an hour or so. So plays that's two halves. So you can play it in a lunchtime, nearly, kind of like with a little bit of a push and stuff like that. And it means that having a little kind of like league or a championship, you could play over the course of a day. If you pushed it, easily play it over the course of the weekend.
So there is an enormous pedigree to this game. A lot of great designers have been involved over the years. Jervis Johnson himself, having designed Blood Bowl, which is just a genuine classic, a really fun game. It's been refined and evolved since his earliest editions, but there's still a lot of the heart of the original Blood Bowl in there. It's also a very characterful and just, it's both whimsical and kind of silly and a bit goofy. It does a lot of stuff that just makes it really immersive and fun, even though it just on the face of it is completely absurd to play. So Blood Bowl, it's much loved for a reason. DreadBall All-Stars has got to come into this space where, yes, you have the history of DreadBall to live up to, but you've also got the history of Jervis Johnson's own career making amazing games to live up to as well. So I have been very eager to get underneath the rules of the game to sort of understand how they were going to tackle it. So let's start there. What are the rules of DreadBall All-Stars? Each team features 5 players, with every player getting a unique card telling you their abilities. You also receive a card for your team, with a special power, and a card for your coach as well. The aim of the game is to score goals by running the ball up the arena and taking shots from the adjacent hexes. The 2 goals closest to the centre line are worth 1 point, and the furthest goal is worth 2. Play is conducted via alternate activations. The team with the initiative get to choose a player to go first. They flip their player card, and then they can move and take a single action with them. Actions are things like dashing down the board, throwing the ball, making an attempt to score a goal, or slamming an opposing players. To perform these actions, you just take as many d8 as your relevant stat, and then you're looking to roll 5s or above, with 8s causing the dice to explode and letting you roll another d8 in addition. You count your successes, and if you have 2 or 3, you've succeeded. If you have 4 or more, you've triumphed and get an extra little bonus to your successful action. And that's more or less the core rules. There are obviously lots of other rules in play as well, lots of specific stuff for certain circumstances, and every team and their players, they've all got these special cards that have their own special rules on, as well as having a sort of specialist statistic, which means they will always get a success when they attempt whatever the associated action is for that stat. They will have an ability to do something special. So it might move them more quickly, or give them more power in a slam, or do other wild and wonderful things. These cards are really great. You actually use them because you're flipping them over when you activate. It's a really nice way to keep track of who has moved and who hasn't. Your coach has one, your team has one as well. So that's really nice. There are also event cards that happen when there is a goal scored or a period ends. There are, I think default is 2 periods. Basically, 2 complete turns. You can go up to 4 if both players agree. I actually think the more periods, the better. It gives more opportunity for interaction and more goals and more stuff happening. I can understand why the default is 2, though, because that keeps it a much smaller, quicker paced game, and then things become kind of quite frantic within that sort of shorter game span. And there's other stuff as well. There is a foul dice, which is a red dice that you can add in to your tests if you have it. That means you're going to take a little gamble on a dirty play. If you roll a 1, that's going to mean that you got caught out doing a foul. If you roll an 8, then it continues, it explodes in the same way, and you get regular dice and regular successes from that foul dice. And then when you've used a foul, whether it succeeded or not, you pass over the dice to the other team, and then they've now got the option to include a foul in their next roll, which is very, very cool. If you've played DreadBall before, you will be familiar with a lot of those systems, but with all of the special rules and the teams and the way these things are all put together, it is a really fast and sort of, it feels quite nimble and quick. Once you get the hang of it, obviously you need both players to really sort of get their head around the available actions and where things are going to be on the board and the kind of implications of stuff. But once you're playing and people are both understanding it, it can be really super quick. You can do your actions very quickly. It's a very, I don't want to say a limited pool of options, but there, you've got a certain number of things that you can do, and that makes it easier to sort of determine what's the best play here. And the tactics come from positioning, they come from how you want your own players to interact with one another, and the fact that coaches can allow players who have already acted to act again, so you can sort of set up plays and put people in the right kind of spots for passing and throws and tackles and all that sort of stuff. There is the only way in which you can sort of fumble the ball rockets in down the center of the board. It's random where it's going to go, and then it scatters as well. So it moves around the hexes, and then you have to kind of scoop it up as you run past. That's really cool, and you can hand off the ball to one of your other players if they're running past a player who has the ball. You can even get knocked out by the ball when it gets launched, which is fun. But the only way in which you can sort of turn over the ball and get it from the opposing team, you can't just sort of tackle and take it. You have to slam into the other players and then hope that you're able to sort of knock them down or knock them back, and then the ball might scatter from them, and then you'll have the opportunity for your guys to get involved. So there's quite a lot of, it encourages the slams, it encourages you to be quite violent and to get really stuck in, but it's also, because it's so fast-paced, there's a lot of, like basketball essentially, there's a lot of turnovers, there's a lot of restarts, there's a lot of stuff happening, the scores can go up and up and up, and that's really nice. And I think one of the nicest things about the scoring mechanism is because you're not keeping individual track of how many goals you've scored versus how many goals they've scored. You have that single sliding scale, which just moves up and down based on the difference between your score and their score. So if I'm ahead, then it's moving up towards me. If I'm behind, it's moving towards you as my opponent. That's quite a nice way to build tension, I think. If you get all the way to the end, I think it's 7 points, then it's a washout, it's a blowout, or whatever you want to call it, and you've landslide victory, you have won, and there's no way for the other team to come back. But otherwise, you're constantly sort of battling back and forth, and it kind of feels like you're edging along this little spectrum. It's a small thing, but it is really nice. I think it's much nicer to do the scoring in that way than just having your separate totals going up and up and up. The sort of interaction and the dynamics of that scoring track kind of feels like the interaction and the dynamics across players on the board and in the arena. It's very much about how you're interacting with one another. You can separately just, right, I'm going to go and score, I'm going to go and score, I'm going to go and score. That's all I'm going to try and do. But you're encouraged to slam into each other and to interact a lot to really get the most out of the game. And I think that is a real strength. Jervis has said that if Blood Bowl is like American football, then DreadBall All-Stars is much more NBA basketball. And I think that makes sense, certainly when it comes to like the score lines and the speed and the turnovers and all that kind of stuff. I would add that there's also plenty of like ice hockey in there as well. I think that there is, just in the nature of the sort of violence, the fact that you want to be fighting one another, that is all in there. From a sort of design perspective, I think the cards are all really nice. There's a lot of placeholder art on the cards in the prototype set, but you get a good feel for what the event cards look like and what they can do, and as well as the team cards and things like that. A lot of one of the teams that I used is called the Painkillers, and they like to like boost themselves, and they like to they get extra activations because they're pumping themselves full of all of these stims. But then taken out, the players who have boosted themselves and stimmed up get to do loads more in a period, but then they're going to be taken off and they're going to be injured basically to start the next round, the next period. I really like that. I think that's fun. For the placeholders, and this is because it's a prototype. For the placeholder art, there's loads of different versions of Bane, the Batman character, which I thought was very funny. But yeah, obviously that's going to be replaced with much more specific art, which I'm looking forward to seeing. But yeah, in terms of the actual design of everything here, it looks like a really nice set. It looks really considered. It looks accessible. It looks easy to read. There are a lot of different options and rules floating around. Like the first time you set it up, you're going to maybe be a bit overwhelmed, or someone who's not familiar with games might be in just looking at it, purely looking at it. It can be overwhelming because you've obviously got the board, you've got all the players, you've got all the cards. the coach, the team, they've all got special rules. There's loads of different stats. So there is the potential. I think the teach, I think, is going to be a really interesting thing to see how that evolves and people discover the best way to sort of bring people in, because it's not actually complicated. It's not that hard to get your head around, but there's a lot of stuff. Initially, it looks like there's a lot of stuff there. What are my sort of criticisms, I suppose, of the game? Because it's obviously this is a prototype set, so I don't have like a final manual. So I don't know how that will flow when it actually comes to sort of teaching a new reader the rules. I found it largely pretty easy to read and to digest. They've done quite a lot with like references to, this particular rule is explained in more detail here. Overall, the rules are relatively simple. They're relatively easy to learn, and then there's plenty of flexibility within them to give you lots of options so that you can do lots of cool stuff. Probably my biggest fears around the game, there's two, I suppose. One is replayability, and the other is kind of the theme, the world. I'm very much a narrative-led gamer. I love to be immersed in the worlds of the games I'm playing. So when it comes to board games, I love a good theme, a really strong theme, and mechanics representing that theme can really immerse me, even if the rules aren't necessarily as strong as they could be. So that's definitely a thing for me, and I've just very much a personal preference. When it comes to war games and miniatures games, I'm very much led by, I love the factions, I love to have my guys, my faction, I love them to be really distinct and to speak to a certain aesthetic or background and feel. With DreadBall All-Stars, and this is true of sort of previous DreadBalls as well, this is a futuristic sci-fi setting. There's a lot of sort of standard kind of cyberpunk adjacent stuff, big corporations. There's like obviously sinister political machinations behind the scenes. There's a lot of sort of satirical elements in it as well. It's very much in line with your rollerballs or your Robocops or that kind of thing. That's great. I love those kinds of settings. I think there's a lot you can do with that. For DreadBall, at least so far, for DreadBall All-Stars, I'm not personally 100% convinced that there's going to be this sort of, like, am I going to feel the world in the game? Am I going to feel like this team does this and they represent this from the world and they're different to these other teams because of the way the world works and where their place is in the world? Obviously, they've all got different rules, and that's great. I just want the theming and the world to really interact with those rules in a satisfying way. Now, again, I've not seen the actual lore and the sort of more fleshed out rulebook, so I don't know that. All of that stuff might be in there. There might be loads of lore, there might be loads of cool character stuff. If you think back to the original Blood Bowl, the manual includes so much world building just through silly quotes and like stories about previous games. So there's a lot that can be done with that I hope is in the final version of DreadBall All-Stars. And then, the other point was replayability. Now, the game's really quick, the game's really simple, but there are lots of different rules and lots of different specialties that you can use. One-off rules, one-off things that can add a lot of flavour to it, which is great. But you also want there to be a lot of replayability. I want to sort of get my own team, and I want to really be able to get my head around them and to understand them and be able to get the best out of them. Now, if it's a Beer and Pretzels game, how many times am I going to be able to replay it? How often am I going to want to bring it to the table? Am I going to be able to get really invested in my guys and want to play with them again and again and again? What I think is really effective here is that there are loads of ideas that have been brought in to basically try and tackle that specifically.
What we've done is if you play in the championship, you get legacy cards. Now, every team, every coach has their own deck of DreadBall cards that they use during the game to do special things. So they'll allow you to dash one extra hex, which is a bit like going for it. You get a bonus to a skill roll, jump back up, things like that. Useful things that you can do. But every team gets 3 bespoke cards that you shuffle into the deck, which are unique to that team. So it gives a little bit of a flavour to that deck. Every team's deck will be slightly different. And when you play in a championship, if you have it's kind of a bit like the Euros. You have a group stage where everybody plays everybody, and then the top 4 teams after the group stage go to the semi-finals and then on to the finals. And if
Right.
you manage to make it into the semi-finals, you're awarded a legacy card, which you then get to shuffle into your deck of cards, and it's good. Basically, it's going to be a good
Right.
thing. It also comes with a set of championship cards and tells you how to run a Battle Royale championship if you want to. And the legacy cards that you get from Battle Royale are different to the ones that you would
Right.
get for a standard game. Yeah. So you've got on top of the like standard championships.
These different game modes like Battle Royale or Anarchy Arena can use different arenas themselves on which to play, different numbers of players, different event cards, lots of different ways to create variability within the games. There's a lot of ways that they have baked in like variability, which I'm a big fan of. I think that's really wise. I think that is going to be where the game lives or dies, because the first few games are always going to be fun because you're learning about the game and you're sort of getting to grips with your team and sort of finding out what you really like about it. But you want to be able to play multiple games. You want to be able to play 4 games in a row and they feel different. You want to be able to play every weekend at your local tournament, in your local league, and it feels different and it feels like you're progressing towards something. So that is a long-term goal, and I'm very pleased that that has been a big priority for Jervis and his team. Hopefully, all of that stuff is as good as it sounds when the final game comes out, because for me, that's a big part of stuff. I've not talked too much about the miniatures, but the miniatures are really lovely. They're just really well-designed teams. They have their own sort of distinct feel. I'll be really intrigued to see what the other teams that sort of, you get 2 basic teams in the core box, but there are 7 teams available. So I'll be excited to see how they are designed and whether they, again, this kind of distinction between teams, I want them to look and to feel quite different. In the main box, one of the teams kind of big bruisers who are hard hitting. They like to slam. They like to deal damage almost. The other team are much more elfin. They're light and they're fast and they're dashing around and they're scoring points. That gives you some very different ways of playing the game, which I quite like. Based on what I've seen and played so far, I think that Jervis Johnson has found a way to retain the fast and frenetic and fun gameplay experience that DreadBall has always offered, whilst also finding new ways to create tactical depth and to sort of build in more replayability. There's a lot of fun to be had in this box. So I'm quite excited to see how its Kickstarter does and how people take to it over the next couple of months. I think the Kickstarter starts on the March 17th, so very soon. I think there is lots of cool stuff to explore within it. I'm hoping that we see more of the sort of lore and the rest of the teams and some of the cool art that all comes together. That kind of thing I think will only add to what is in this box, in this prototype box. The potential for this as a sort of light, fun game to play at the end of an evening, you've played something more intense and you want to have a quick game, I think is absolutely there. I think it's a great starter game as well to a gaming session. Will that replayability be there for multiple games, for doing league days and things like that? That is something I'm personally eager to explore. I want to play some more of this to see if I am still as excited and having as much fun with it after another 10 games and after, however many 20 or 30 more games. Like, do I still find new nuances within it? Am I sort of coming up with new strategies? Are those other gameplay modes bringing loads more that keeps me really excited to explore it? That is something that you can leave with me because, I think there's a lot I'm excited about here. So I can't wait to see how it does when it starts and what the community looks like as it builds. DreadBall All-Stars from Mantic launches on Kickstarter on March 17th, and I've included a link to that Kickstarter in the description below. Go and check it out if you're interested in finding out more. So that's me and my experiences with DreadBall All-Stars. A really fun starting place, lots to enjoy. Let's see how it does on Kickstarter. I'm very grateful to Mantic for sending me the prototype copy. I'm very grateful to Jervis for chatting to me and sort of, exploring some of the development of this game and the background behind it. And I'm very grateful for you being here and listening to me ramble on about my experiences with the game. So thank you very much for watching. I'm Jordan, and this is Jordan Sorcery. actually really love the size and sort of robustness of this box, just as like something to lean on in videos. Very tempted to make this a permanent feature, because then I can introduce videos like this. I think that'd be pretty good. But yeah, I mean, it's a big box, man. This is really big. I don't know if the final version is going to be this big, but I could imagine it being so, especially if they want to create space for all of the other team miniatures to go in a final core box as well. But again, something that I'm excited to find out. I like being able to put all of the expansions into one box. So if that's what they're doing here, thumbs up from me.